Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning at the Inland Lakes Convention. And I just wanted to give the title of the workshop that we're involved in, just to make sure you're at the right one. The title is The Best Conservation Tools You and Your Lake Association. And the three speakers will be Melissa DeSimone, Paul Stadecki, and Lon Nordine. They're all board members on the Michigan Lake and Streams Associations. And the first speaker today will be Melissa DeSimone. She's been the executive director of MLSA since 2019. She began her lake work with the Gravel Lake Association in Van Buren County in 2010, when she also started attending MLSA regional meetings. Melissa's education includes a bachelor's in elementary education, a master's in education administration, and she taught 6th grade science for 10 years prior to her work with the MLSA. Her role with MLSA has been a natural culmination of her passion for environmental education and conservation, as well as organizational leadership. She looks forward to growing MLSA and increasing the outreach and educational opportunities of the association. And without further ado, I'll leave it off for Melissa.
Thank you, Paul. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Michigan Inland Lakes Convention for 2020. We're very excited to have you all here. So you are here for our presentation, The Best Conservation Tools You and Your Lake Association. There. Oh, I thought it wasn't going to go to slideshow for a second. We're happy to be here with you today. And I have our contact information here on this slide, and I will share it again later in the presentation. While you are, sitting back and listening to what we have to say, if questions come up, please feel free to use the chat. You can click on the button and you can write questions in there. I will also have times for you to answer questions, for us to get into breakout rooms to talk about topics, and there will be time for questions as well. So for now, if you you have yourself on mute, if you keep yourself that way, when it's time for discussion, we'll have you unmute yourself for those times. Okay, so we will move on today. Today, we are going to talk about quite a few different topics. This is a 3-hour workshop, so we broke it into 3 parts. We're going to talk about your lake property first, because everything starts at home and what you can do with your own home. Then we're going to move into lake associations and what an effective association looks like, as well as some things associations can do to help out their communities. And then your conservation legacy, your legacy moving forward for your lake, and the activities you can do there. So just to give you a little overview, if some of these things seem, like, oh, I know a little bit about that, there's probably going to be something else that will be new for you later on. So the first section for our presentation today is the one that I am going to start off talking about. And we're going to talk about what conservation actually looks like on your lake property, because it's different than other types of property. We lake homeowners are very, we have a very unique environment, and we want to keep it that way. We want to make sure that we have, quality lake, and that we are taking care of doing our part for our lake. So we're going to talk about some best management practices. And in conservation and watershed management, those are often called BMPs. So best management practices, that's what that stands for, if you've ever heard that term. And then, like I said, we'll take a poll and we'll have a time for some breakout discussion. So I thought we would start with, we can practice the chat, and we can also think about what conservation looks like on your lake property. So if you take a minute and think about what you think conservation looks like on lake property, and then type a response into the chat box. I'll give you a minute or so to think of something and put it in the chat box. Got some chats coming in. It's good. All right, good. Glad we're getting some practice with the chat box. Lots of things here.
And Melissa, there was a question early on about slide shares and recordings, and yes, there will be a link that you guys will have, that you'll have access to the information and the recordings for those that are recorded today. And so watch your inbox for that information.
Yep, I will, and I will also, I'm also recording it too, so we'll have a backup just in case. Okay, so a minute has gone by, and I see lots of really great things in the chat. So I see things like native plants on the shore, and I see lots of things about shoreline protection, which is great, and little intervention in construction, no grass, less invasive species, minimal hard surfaces. So there's some really great ideas that you're already coming to us with. So that is wonderful. So we'll go on and we'll take a look at some best management practices. Just maybe to give you some new ideas, maybe to remind you of some things that you can be doing as well. So I'm starting off with the negative things, and I've got some practices that we put into place because they're easy and they're quick. To put fertilizer down on your lawn. That can be a quick way to make grass grow, but that also, as a lot of us seem to know, that would make the plants in the lake grow as well when that runs off. Irrigating lawns when you're near the lake shore, oftentimes the extra water is not necessary. Applying salt, salt, I think, is something that we kind of take for granted, that doesn't really go away. And so you got to think about your salt and your sand application in the wintertime. And then managing yard and garden waste. So that is, I think that might be one of the hardest things I've found for people coming from a suburban landscape. You want to pick up those leaves right away, and you want to make sure that your yard looks good throughout the season. But the leaves can be good for insect hibernation, and the composting can actually be a much more effective way to take care of those leaves than burning them or other options. So that's something that we can talk about more as we move on here. I'm just giving you some general background. So some proactive things, reducing runoff from impervious areas. So just for full disclosure, that right-hand side picture there with the flooding, that's actually my own lake property. We have quite a bit of runoff that comes from the road. We're at a very low spot. And so areas like that can be shocking, and they also can give people some pause and maybe want to do some quick interventions. But often things like capturing some of that runoff for that irrigation that you were concerned about, or installing rain gardens, like you can see down here in this other picture. They have rain barrels and rain gardens to help capture that. That can be a much better solution than other things I've seen, like adding topsoil and things like that. It's not a very good solution. Or letting it run right into the lake. Also not a great solution. So, a lot of you were talking about the natural shorelines. So you can see some great examples here. Minimize the clearing of your land, replace the lawn with the native plants, avoid and remove any seawalls that you might have, and then stabilize and revegetate the shorelines naturally with the plants. That actually can be very effective. I know people have a hard time moving away from like the control structures, especially in this time of high water. It makes everyone want to go to this idea of permanent seawalls, and the vegetation can be a permanent seawall that can actually help to maintain your property line as well, right by the water. So I have the whole list of best management practices there. I saw that we had a couple of chat questions come in. I don't know if they were related to some of our topics, or if people had any questions or comments they wanted to make about the best management practices so far. Did anybody have any thoughts on any of that?
So, Melissa, this is Paul. So it looks like a lot of the ones that came in talked about natural shorelines, water quality, and invasive species control, and kind of balancing the different lake uses, and obviously protecting lake quality and restoring property values.
And I did see, I'm looking at the chat right now, I see a couple of things that came on. What about calcium chloride instead of salt? I don't know, you might even be able to weigh in on that, Paul. I feel like that is one and the same, that would still have the same.
It's an alternative. I'm not sure the effectiveness of it. There's some other alternatives too. I think like beets are another one that I've heard of, like crushed beets.
Interesting.
So there are some alternatives. Obviously, they're probably more expensive than the readily available road salt. But yeah, we do some monitoring or testing chlorides, and it's surprising how high it is in some of these more urbanized areas.
Yeah, I think that's why I brought it up, because I really think that it's something that people don't think about. It's really easy to throw salt down because you're worried about, your car slipping or someone slipping. And I understand, the safety is important, but, a little bit of salt goes a long way for that sort of thing. Right. And you go to parking lots in any suburban area, and it's almost shocking how much salt you see down on the parking lot in the wintertime. Tricia Denton from Glen Lake Association, thank you for joining us, Tricia. She reminds everyone to not put your leaves or grass clippings into the water, and to keep composting and burning well away from the shore. And that is a good point. So, I've actually witnessed that, had to talk to a neighbor about their use of, the lake as a dumping ground for their leaves. Not a great idea. We're trying to avoid nutrients in the water, and putting leaves into the water is a way to load the water with nutrients. A comprehensive list of Michigan native plants that would thrive on a shoreline, from Rex Vaughn, who's one of our MLSA board members. Thanks for your question, Rex. I would highly recommend going to the Michigan Natural Shoreline Partnership website. They have excellent resources for what you can do. on your shoreline. So that would be the place that I would look at, and you can assess your own shoreline there with their Michigan's Michigan Shoreland Stewards program. And if you go through that program, you can get yourself a rating, which I think we saw in one of the previous slides, and you could get yourself a rating, and I will send you you can purchase a sign that MLSA will actually send to you. Okay, and then so Lisa says that she's heard of softening seawalls as a way to protect the lake without the expense of removing a seawall. Yeah, Lisa, I can tell you what that means. Yes, it means putting things like planting in front of the seawall. So, you know, on my lake, we already have a lot of seawalls that were put in many years ago. So our suggestion to people on Gravel Lake is to consider planting in front of their seawall to help soften the wave action, so that you don't have to go through the structural work of removing that seawall, but you can still reestablish natural vegetation to help strengthen your shoreline, you know, in spite of the seawall, basically. Okay, yes, and Paul put in the link to the Michigan Natural Shoreline Partnership, so thank you, Paul, I appreciate that. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to take this a little bit deeper. So that was just some information, but let's take this a little bit deeper, and we're going to do a poll. Okay, so there's 2 poll questions, and those are going to pop up on your screen, and you are going to get a chance to answer them one at a time. And so this will be neat because we'll all get to see the results. So here's the first poll question up on your screen. It says, what is the biggest barrier to implementing lake-friendly practices on personal property? Do you think it's cost, time, how it looks, or what the neighbors think? So we've got some answers coming in. We've got some really great participation on this. Thank you, everybody, for answering our poll. Let's see. All right, so it looks like the poll has been closed and the results are shared. So you can see there that cost is the biggest factor that people perceive as the biggest barrier to the lake-friendly practices, followed by how it looks and what your neighbors think. And those are concerns I've heard from people on lakes, that they are concerned about these things. I think you would be surprised about the cost. If you priced out a project from start to finish of putting in a brand new seawall versus going through and having a contractor put in native plants, I think you would actually be surprised about the cost. So I understand the concern about cost, and I hope that that's something that you might look into or consider an appropriate investment for your lake property. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to the next poll question, which is to think about your own property. What is one area of improvement you need to make on your property? So what's something, based on all the things we just talked about, what are some things that you need to focus on for your property? It's kind of fun when you're on our end, because I can see the results coming in. It's kind of fun to see that. But you'll get to see them in just a minute. right, we are getting there. Anybody else? And I know I've been in Zoom meetings before where the poll didn't work. So if that's happening for you, I apologize. But sometimes the poll is a little tricky and doesn't always come up for everyone. Okay, I think we can go ahead and close that. And here are the results. So we had 61% feel like they need more native plants. So that's still a great area of need. I'm glad to see that we are, that people are already conscious or already have worked through the impervious surfaces. And by that, I hope that we know an impervious surface is like a roof, driveway, anything that is stopping the water from going straight into the ground where it is absorbed. Runoff management, I'm right there with you. I aired my own dirty laundry. You saw what my yard does. So, okay, so need more native plants. Great. All right. So thank you all for participating in the poll. I appreciate that. It's good to see those results. And we're going to move into a breakout discussion. And so these are some of the questions that you are going to talk about in a small group setting. So we have 3 main questions. I want you to think again about what is the one area of improvement you know you need to make on your property. And there may be more than one. I can think of, at least a dozen things I would like to keep working on, but I would like for you to prioritize one area of improvement. What steps do you need to take to address the area? So what can you do to make those improvements? And then how do we convince more people on our lake to do those same things, to make that same improvement? Now, being in a breakout room, you are going to be in a small group where you can talk with other people about this. So the idea is to help one another, to brainstorm, to offer suggestions to other people in the group with you. So you're going to be in a group of 5 or 6 people. So you'll want to take the time to, kind of help each other out. And you're going, let me see if there's a important, oh, thank you, Megan. That's great. She put all that in there in the chat. So that will be in the chat. And then I'm actually going to, thanks, Paul, for that too. Paul put a resource in the chat as well. So if you're following the chat, there's a lot of really great information in there. I'm going to copy and paste this from Megan in the chat so that, because I know when you go to your breakout rooms, these questions may disappear from the chat. It becomes a different chat. So if that happens, hopefully we will have a chance to remember the questions. So one area of improvement you need to make, the steps that you need to take to address that area, and how you can get other people to make those changes as well. So
and once I push everybody to the rooms, I'll push that back out in the chat for everybody.
Oh, awesome. That'll be great. Thank you so much. So that will, and I think I told you 10 minutes. Is that correct, Megan? Is that what I said?
Yes.
For the chat? Okay. So this will be for 10 minutes in your breakout room to talk with each other. Okay. And then we'll come back and we'll discuss. So we'll see you in 10 minutes.
Morning.
Good morning. Thanks for joining this morning. You can go ahead and unmute yourselves because we are in a small group setting. So, you know, it's easier to make sure we're not talking over each other. All right, and it looks like, that's interesting. It's not really doing, oh, you can still see the chat. Zoom changes their features so many times that I feel like I never know what. The last time I was in a breakout room, I couldn't see the chat anymore, or I tried to chat to someone and then it told me I couldn't because I was leaving the breakout room. And so anyway,
It's
so
like
good morning, everyone.
perpetually listening to their user groups and constantly tweaking, and it's hard to keep up.
I mean, it's great, but then I just, I get so used to something, I never know what's going on.
Everybody needs a 10-year-old in the room with them all the time.
Yes, yes. So thank you for joining this morning. I feel like I went a little bit too fast. So if there's anything that you, you know, I don't know, need clarification on, let me know. But did you have any ideas of things you want to do on your own property?
I feel like I'm on Bill's Lake in Newaygo.
Okay.
And it has a beautiful crown of trees around it. And one of the things we've noticed is a propensity for people to take a lot of trees down. And we're trying to get education out to people about how important it is to not break that crown.
Mm-hmm.
And how I don't think they understand the impact on the whole ecology and the whole environment of the lake that crown does to the environment and the ecosystem within the lake. So that's one of my goals, is to raise awareness with the folks who live around the lake of the importance of that. It's not just about their shoreline, but the crown actually protects their shoreline and creates and kind of coddles that.
Well, yeah, and the tree has great, that holds all that soil in. I mean, it's like instead of having a lot of plant, I mean, that one tree is holding a lot of soil into place. So I just recently, I mean, very recently heard about a program where they are trying to reforest area, and not necessarily forest, but they're trying to replant trees in areas. And do you know Eric Elgin?
No.
He works with MSU Extension, and he was going to work. I feel, you know what, I'm going to make myself a note to reach out to him, because he heard about that. We were in a meeting and someone was talking about this program, and he was like, oh, he's like, lakes would really like this program, and you are a perfect example of that. So what lake did you say you were on again?
Bill's Lake.
Bill's Lake. And
it
where
would
is that
be
located?
nice to know what trees actually grow right on a shoreline.
Like which ones would be good to grow on a shoreline?
Like I wouldn't even know which trees to plant on a shoreline.
Okay, that's good information too.
So long as it's not a mulberry, I'm happy.
I'm
so tired of cleaning purple poop off of my lawn furniture.
Yeah, we have an oak by our lake, but I don't know that that's typical. I think it's weird that grew there, and we have a willow.
Each lake has their own, like we have a lot of oak and birch, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of beech, alder, beech, ash, and sycamores.
Okay. Yeah, we have a lot of willows on our lake.
We have a couple willows, yeah.
Tend to fall down in storms pretty easily. We've started actually putting shrubs in. So we've got some button bush and some mulberry, was it mulberry? Maybe it was mulberry. And things like that we've put in too. All right, so where is Bill's Lake located?
Bill's Lake is in Newaygo. It's right off of M82, so it's south and east of downtown Newaygo.
Okay.
We're about 4 miles from Hess Lake.
Okay.
So M37 comes down, you hit Hess Lake first, then Brooks Lake, then Bills. And there's no apostrophe in Bills. It's named after Abel Bills.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, I'm just going to write this down, and I'm going to talk to him about that program. Maybe we'll reach
So,
out.
Martha, how are you trying to convince others? How are you?
It's so hard because, you get the tree hugger comment, and they just want everything to look like a golf course.
Yeah, they want to dismiss it because it's not that like kind of perfect suburban style.
And we had one neighbor. We are on a particularly heavily wooded section, and our property's been in the family since the 40s, so we're very old school in our whole section where we are. Everyone around we're very spoiled. We're all legacy properties, so we have maintained pretty heavily wooded. But couple new property turned hands over 3 doors down, and they just like cleared it out, and it was the sunlight, it was palpable, and it created a wind tunnel for their next door neighbor.
Oh,
And it changed there, and the whole front slope now looks sunburned. It's just, and I think they kind of regret it a little bit. We're like, maybe you got a little too aggressive. I mean, some of them did have to come down. Trees do,
Yes.
you don't want them falling on your house. But so that's what we're struggling with, is how to get the message out firmly but gently, and in a way that they'll receive it without us telling them what to do on their property. We don't have a proper association with any, we don't have rules. We have a
Okay.
social association.
Well, these next sessions will be good for you, because you'll get some ideas of what, other things you can do aside from the social stuff. So,
Nancy, how about your lake? What's going on there?
well, I live on Lake Leelanau.
oh,
Yeah.
great.
And we've got like a 75-foot lot with lawn going right down to the beach, and I cannot convince my husband to give it up. So so my challenge is my husband. So I've been working on him for a long time, and now I have on both edges, kind of sweeping around to the front, shoreline plantings, and I'm going to use like a secret incrementalism approach and just keep expanding it, and it's beautiful, and he loves it. He just doesn't want to give up the lawn.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
slow but sure.
Yep.
Well, it
I
sounds like you've got
finally, in the
right-
last 2 years, have been successful at keeping my Joe Pye weed and my Rudbeckia right along the shoreline and letting it go nuts. I converted my husband the same way. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Leave the mint, leave the Joe Pye, leave the Rudbeckia. It's all fine."
Yeah.
I pull out the purple loosestrife. We burn that. He gets his little fix from doing that.
Well, what was amazing is I bought a flat of shoreline plants from, I think, the Grand Traverse Conservation District. I think it had 38 plugs in it or something. In 1 year, this entire space was filled with 6-foot plants.
Oh, wow.
It was unbelievable because it's moist there. I've got cup plants, a couple of veronicas, Joe Pye weed, boneset. Lots of goldenrod. It's absolutely gorgeous. So I wish it was a little easier for me just to do the whole front. And we potentially have a new neighbor that's just thrilled with what I've done. So I've offered to share plants, and I am collecting seeds, and I'm going to be germinating all this stuff, and I hope to give it to people.
Nice.
And hopefully that will, that stuff reseeds pretty easy. So I can get everybody to have a couple Joe Pye weeds. Maybe in a couple of years it'll,
Yeah.
I converted a couple people about Joe Pye weed because they don't want it quite so tall. I pinch mine back in June. So mine only comes up to about 4 feet tall, and it's real clumpy.
That
Nice.
sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Catherine, what kind of project would you like to do on your lake?
Well, I'm actually right in the middle of a fantastic project. I have 60 feet on Crystal Lake in Benzie County. And I'm on, we do have a strong lake association, and we also have the Crystal Lake Watershed Overlay District zoning. So we do have rules. The two problems with rules are educating people about the rules and also keeping them up to date. But my project is I just took out all of the vegetation in my front yard, and we have a road in front of our house. So I have a front yard and then road and then a beach lot. And I've just planted the whole thing with native vegetation. So there'll be no grass, just plants. The anchor plant is little blue stem, which is all over the place. And then my ground cover plant is going to be bearberry. So we planted it. It's not, I don't have a huge lawn, and my neighbors on either side have grass. But there are a lot of people that walk up and down the road and look at it and go, "What is this?" I will say that planting it's hard planting it in the beginning because I did not put irrigation in because I don't intend to water it in the future. So I have hoses out there moving them around. but we did absolutely no soil amendment. Everything went right into the sand. We did mulch around a little bit, but hopefully as I go forward, probably this year, next will be a lot of work, but as I go forward, I won't be watering, I won't be mulching, I'll just be enjoying it. And I'm getting new birds, by the way, already, and the plants are really small. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I wish other people would do it. I find around Crystal Lake, people are really married to their grass.
Yeah, people like their grass.
There's
a great booklet coming out called, it's called Shoreline, oh my gosh, Shoreline Living. Yeah, Shoreline Living, and they just produced it, and it has beautiful pictures. It's very pretty, and that's coming out pretty soon. I actually think you're going to get one as a participant in the convention. They'll be mailing you one. We're going to go.
So it'd be the Cadillac office.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I'm going to start up our presentation again. Wait, there it is. All right, so we had quite a few breakout rooms, and so we're probably, it would take us quite a while to get through all the breakout rooms, but I would love for people to share some of the projects or ideas that they had in their breakout room. If anyone would like to do that.
I guess I'll jump in since nobody else is.
Thank you.
Our breakout room kind of focused on natural shorelines and developing them on the shoreline, and there were a lot of good ideas about and resources that were brought up on how to do that and how to answer questions from your neighbors on what you're doing, that type of thing.
Okay, yeah, that's great.
Well, this is, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please.
This is Rusty Gallant. I was in breakout room 8, and we were having this fascinating discussion about algae blooms, both the green-brown algae and the HABs that are in various lakes, and that it creates an urgency to the topic of, one of our participants said they put signs on the road that says don't fertilize, creating sort of a cultural norm, and these other small breakout associations that are really focused on the topic of nutrient control. Anyway, it was a fascinating discussion. Could have gone on another hour.
Oh, good. That's good. We got to start the convention out right. We've got so many amazing topics for 3 days, so I'm glad we've got the energy this morning. Does anybody else want to share something else that they discussed in their breakout?
Yeah, this is Bill Alsover. I was, I think, group 2 was the number. And one of the areas that we talked about was the convincing more people, but really the general consensus was that our lakes have gone through quite a change on their usage. Those that are now really using the lake as hard as they can for their weekend. And it's those weekend people that are going to be very difficult, I think, to convince to make some substantial changes to their waterfront, to their water runoff, to all of that, because they don't live here, and they're up here to have a good time for a couple of days and then shut the door on Sunday and go home.
Yeah, that's definitely a concern.
I was with Rusty in group 8, mm-hmm. and just to even further was really, how do you, most people in this chat room were already believers, I'll call it. It's how do you educate the non-believers, or the people that do have the lawns going all the way down to the shoreline, that, how do you educate that group? Is it through mass, mailings in their mailbox, your lake association putting things on their website? But it's more of an educational struggle.
It is. Does anyone want to address that? I have some things I can say and some suggestions I can make, but I like this discussion and I don't want to turn it back into a lecture. So if you have something that you would like to add as a good way to market these lake-friendly practices.
Melissa?
Things.
Oh, Tricia. Go ahead, Tricia.
She knows I always have something to say about getting people to go to your website when they're up for the weekend, getting their hard recreation in. It's not really scanning your website. We have at Glen Lake, we've found more and more Instagram, Facebook, social media posts with pictures that grab people's attention, that people can, tag and share and that kind of thing can expand your reach well beyond your lake association membership, or even the people who are property owners on your lake, to those people that are weekend visitors, short-term renters, all those kinds of things. Consider using social media.
But Tricia, question on that. It's the renters, the people that come in for a short period of time, they are there, like the gentleman said earlier, they're there for a few days. I think it's the owners of that property that need to start with, if the property that the renters rent is already compliant, then the renters, they can come in for a few days and do whatever, but it's the people that own the property that you need to convince to, hey, let's improve the quality of this land, the shoreline, et cetera.
Our lake association does a lot of support, offers a lot of support for those rental properties. We have historic cottage and rental properties going back,
right,
5+ years on our lake. There's a long history of that. It's a part of the culture. And everything that we can do to support those business people and the people that come to those properties who love the lake too, with information that's at the rental, but also designing the property to incorporate best management practices, whether it's their lawn care or their shoreline or their postings about preventing invasive species transfer from their boats they're bringing up, and the whole gamut. So you really hit on a key point. It's really important to connect with the people who own or manage those rental properties for those short-term visitors and provide them with the information to support their visitors to treat our lakes well.
And I really, I think one of the words that Tricia just used is really important, and that's culture. That is a really hard thing to change. The culture of your lake can be a very difficult thing to change, but a lot of this work is rooted in that culture. So, this idea that a lot of people either have come from or they've been inundated with photographs of a perfect property being, a golf course like grass where it's all the same species of grass and there's no weeds, so to speak, and it's beautifully manicured. You can see the lines from the lawnmower. That has really been inundated in our culture, and we really believe as Americans that is what our lawn or what our property should look like. So it really has to be very, like Tricia was saying, it has to be a cultural shift. So, inundating people with examples. I went on my lake from being the only property where we've deliberately put a natural shoreline in, and having people, you could hear them from their boats, because you can hear everything people say on their boats. You could hear them from their boats saying, gosh, we need to get those DeSimone's a lawnmower. Like, seriously, these were the things they were saying. to the point where, you know, we have slowly been seeing other people adopting these processes too. And, you know, one of the things in my breakout room that we discussed that I thought was, you know, so typical too, you know, even among my household, you know, my husband is a great proponent of lakes. He is a wonderful riparian, but it took him a while. I had to, like we were talking about, it was Nancy in my group who was talking about how she's slowly been creeping her natural shoreline to cover more and more of the area. I did exactly the same thing, and now he's the one who's saying, "Oh, well, we could cover even more of this. We don't need this grassy spot here." So, you know, it does take some time. It takes you being dedicated to what is right on your property, and then also helping other people with the resources and providing that information. Tricia was talking about social media, and, you know, we have a very active, on my lake, we have a very active Facebook group. People love that Facebook group. They love to get their information there. They go there and tell each other things. So we also fill that feed with, gee, our local native plant nursery is having a sale this weekend, you know, you should go. And, you know, our lake association has purchased those shoreline steward signs for people who've taken the assessment and who've gotten a certification. And, you know, and actually my husband will even go to, he's the president of our lake association. If we have a new person on the lake, you know, if they're in an area that looks like, oh, you know, they may want a seawall in there because their neighbors have seawalls, he will actually go to them with resources and talk to them and say, look, I really just want to talk to you about this before you decide that you want to put a seawall in on your property. So it really takes it does take a lot of dedication on our part as the people who, like you said, are aware of these issues. It takes a lot of dedication on our part, but I think that, you know, the more you are clear in your message and you spread that message to as many channels as you can, the more people you do bring to that. Culture is not something we can change overnight, but we can change it. Daniel?
Sorry.
You mentioned two things real quickly. You said one about when a new person moves in, we have a packet on Long Lake in Grand Traverse County that goes to everybody that moves in. So it's a given that they get all the nice ideas to do with your shoreline and things like that. The other thing you mentioned was you can hear everything on someone on a boat. I stress privacy at my whenever I talk to people about shoreline preservation. And I mean, I have a few windows that I can see the lake, but I have mostly trees in front of my house, and I don't have to worry about hearing people or seeing people or listening to too much music. And I encourage that. I say to others, or maybe what you do is you go park in front and turn your speakers on loud when you're in front of those grassy homes to promote some sort of barrier that they may want because they don't want to have all that noise. I'm being facetious.
No, I hear what you're saying. Yes. And actually geese too. So it'll some of those, if you keep it wild in front, then the geese don't want to come on your property either. So, Rusty, were you going to speak? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something, and I'm not sure how broadly applicable this is, but in our community, there is sort of a changeover of people that are long-term, mostly versus the visitors, and there's a political divide where there's a lot of animosity between the people that are concerned with ecology and other people that say, you know, look, we still have these beautiful sunsets and you guys are trying to fix problems that we don't have. And we say, no, we're all about prevention. So we have in our Facebook community, we have to have a closed group of people that are conservation minded, and we can't let others in the closed group because it gets too nasty. And then we have the broader community where we can just sort of sprinkle messages and draw people into the closed group. but we have our private productive conversation among my organization, the Black Lake Preservation Society, and the broader Black Lake community. We have to just entice people to come into the closed conversation where we can be productive and try to earn members of that closed community one at a time.
I mean, the closed community is not a bad idea for candidates talk. I'm sorry, go ahead. You had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. I understand that concern about the, a closed group, but then, see, that seems to be a problem in our society. It's kind of like this tribalism that we have to deal with, where you only talk to certain people, and I understand your point. Like you don't want the conversation to get nasty, but then we have these sort of barriers that we've created. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. No, I do. I understand what you're saying. And I really, I keep going back to this word, but I really think that every lake has such a unique dynamic. It's a very unique culture. So I think that a lot of that will have to do with it. I see a lot of questions and comments in the chat. It looks like Paul has been taking care of some of those for us. So thank you, Paul, for answering some of those questions. I really appreciate that. And one of them, let's see, it looks like, I think Paul did a really good job answering a lot of these things, which I think is wonderful. Paul Hostler. He's our moderator today, and he's going above and beyond. So we're going to take just a couple of minutes and wrap up if we have any final things to say. And then we're going to give you a 5-minute break. And then we have a couple of other topics like lake associations themselves, and then things you can do for long-term protection on your lake. James, did you have something you wanted to mention?
One thing I wanted to mention is that one of the easy allies for this that I don't seem to be participating in this is the local conservation departments on a county level. Every year, almost every county extension office has got a plant sale, and more it's featuring native plants as their primary bulk of their selections, but there's almost never shoreline plants available. And so that is a widespread advocacy network that doesn't seem to be involved in shoreline conservation practices, especially from a botanical aspect. And so it might be really advantageous to get into discussion with them, because they have the opportunity to disperse not only the plants, but also the education and funding to get these plants installed in shorelines.
Okay, I think that's a really great point. And I think some conservation districts do more work than others. I know my conservation district in Van Buren County recently had a plant sale, and there were some great options for shoreline. We were able to purchase some buttonbush and some other more woody shrubs to put on the shoreline, and that was really great. But I think you're right. I think there is a little bit of it's kind of patchy which conservation districts do that work. I would say the same thing about CISMAs as well, which are the cooperative invasive species management areas. There are, and it probably has to do with how many lakes are in their area, but there are some who do some really great programs for lakes, and then others who are focused on terrestrial. But I also wonder, like I said, if it's the amount of lakes they have in their area. I'm not sure. I'm going to go ahead and put my email address back in the chat. If anyone has any follow-up questions or anything that they want to ask me specifically about, managing your own home front, and then that, bleeding out into your community and trying to recruit people to do that as well, I'm happy to talk with you some more. I just wanted to make sure that we honored the 5-minute break that I would like to give you in just a few seconds here. And then also that we have plenty of time to discuss lake associations and things that you can do on that group level. You know, the individual level is wonderful, but the group level can be really powerful with your lake association, and then also how your lake association can then impact you know, greater areas and then also into the future. So it's 9:55 and we will get started with Lon Nordine at 10 o'clock. Okay, thanks everyone.
Hi, Mark.
Hello.